We got a real interesting one for you today. It's a company called Eneti, and I'll just pull up some stuff here and we'll get right to it. So hold on 1 second. So here's a price chart for Eneti. It's currently at 12.88, and if you go back to when it first went public in 2014, you can see it went from about 1,200 at the height or 1,100 all the way down to 12. So lost about 99% of its value. Uh, feel bad for anyone who bought at the IPO and is still holding it, but let's talk about a few things. Uh, I did buy some around 80 and too early, but now I have a good size position in this and I'm up about 30% on it in the past few months. So, what is this company and why did it go down 99%? And why is it looking interesting now? So, this company used to be called Scorpio Bulkers. And if you remember Scorpio Tankers, I did a video on that. I mentioned this other company, Eneti. So, they're both run by the same people. Eneti is currently about almost 30% owned by the Lauro family and through direct ownership or through their family office, which is Scorpio Holdings. So they own about a third of the company. It used to be Scorpio Bulkers. There was a time after around the time of the Great Financial Crisis where a lot of these shipping companies were suffering because there had been a lot of overinvestment prior to the Great Financial Crisis. And when there's too many ships, the prices go down, and a lot of people that had gone into financing these ships got really hurt. So you went through a period of about, as you can see here, about 10 years where these things didn't make any money, and now they're starting to look interesting again. But a lot of hedge funds and private equity guys and other people like that got into shipping when it looked like a great business and then didn't make money for 10 years. They don't want to finance stuff like this anymore. And add to the fact that there's a group called Basel, which BASAEL, which are basically the financial regulators internationally that get together periodically and come up with their standards for banks. And due to so many people losing a bunch of money uh, in prior years with shipping, they decided that for financial institutions, it would be harder to lend on these assets because there would be more capital charges. So generally, when you look at a bank or an investment bank or other financial institution and you look at their balance sheet, uh, you don't get credit for 100 cents on the dollar for a lot of things. For stuff like cash, sure, you get 100 cents on the dollar credit. For things like marketable securities, they might give you 80% credit for that. They call a haircut. And then for these liquid items like or volatile items like ships, all of a sudden the capital charge is greater, so it made it less advantageous to lend to these institutions, which meant that fewer people were lending on it, fewer people were building ships, and then over time, you sort of have the ship shortage, and then prices can go parabolic either in the bulk market or the VLCC market or product tanker market or any of the other specialty shipping things. So this used to be Scorpio Bulkers, and this company made a lot of mistakes. They decided to get into this new area, which is offshore wind installation vessels, which is what NETI does now. And they sold off all their dry bulk ships, which are the ships that you use to transport things like coal and steel and bauxite and other things like that, uh, and use that money to buy ships to do offshore wind installation vessels, wind turbine installation vessels. And they sold at exactly the wrong time. So eventually, um, rates for dry bulk went through the roof, but they sold just before that. So if that wasn't bad enough, uh, they bought a couple of ships to do this type of work, and they couldn't get many contracts because they were a new entrant, and this is kind of a specialized field. So they decided to merge with another company. called CJAX, and then they did this very dilutive deal where they issued a bunch of shares to CJAX to get the two companies to merge. So after selling the ships at exactly the wrong time, right before prices skyrocket, they did this, very dilutive deal with another company where they issued a bunch of shares. They drove this stock price to the toilet, and then they paid themselves a $20 million bonus to the insiders for doing such a great job. So normally you should stay away from shipping because shipping is a terrible business. But the people who run Eneti and Scorpio tankers and the family office are very opportunistic. So you should watch what they do. When Scorpio tankers wasn't doing very well and they did an equity raise, the equity raise was undersubscribed, but the insiders, including the family office, had purchased about $20 million for themselves, which told you that it was a good deal because if you had followed them in at that price, you would have doubled your money very quickly. And besides buying it with the family office, they also purchased a bunch of shares through Eneti. So Eneti, as I said, they had sold the bulkers and then they had a bunch of cash on the balance sheet. So when Scorpio Tankers did an equity raise, they bought a bunch of shares and then sold it a year or two later and at a very high profit. And that helped Eneti as well. So recently, um, they did a um, repurchase of some of the shares from the people who had sold CJAX to Eneti. So the people who sold CJAX to Eneti decided to sell back their shares to Scorpio Holdings, which is the private office that runs Eneti and Scorpio Tankers, and they sold them at a price about $8.90, and then irrespective of that purchase, Scorpio Holdings also bought a bunch of shares in the open market at $9.78. So if you could see, they're buying around $10. So when it was at $10, I bought a bunch, and then it went to 9, and I bought more, and it went to 8, I bought more, and then it touched 7, and I was out of money, but I bought a little bit more, and now it's at 12.89. So why did it go from 7 or 8 to 12.89? Well, they announced a merger with a company called Cadeler, which is a Norwegian company that does the same type of thing, offshore wind turbine installation vessels. And when I said that the family that runs this is pretty opportunistic, if you look at the time when the repurchases from the CJAX people happened, that was in March. And then a couple of months later, they announced a merger at 50% more than the price at which they bought back the shares from this other company. So uh, I saw them buying and I knew something was up, and then I bought as well. And I did sell a few shares in my retirement account when the merger happened, but when I looked at Cadeler, Cadelar, and they're doing a stock for stock merger. Cadeler's a bigger company; it's about $1 billion, and Eneti at the time was about 500 million. Sorry, 400 million. And when I looked at the conversion price, how many shares of Cadeler you're getting for Eneti, it worked out to about 1470. So at the time it was 13 and change. So I sold a little bit, but I still have, I would say 90% of the Eneti that I bought. And I have not looked through Cadeler's 10K very thoroughly, or actually 20F annual filings very thoroughly. So I will look through that before I decide to hold this post merger. But let's just talk about Eneti and then we'll talk about Cadeler. So Eneti has these vessels to install offshore wind turbines. So those little spin windmills that you see off the coast that provide energy. And the interesting thing is that just like with VLCCs, crude carriers, or product tankers, or any other kind of ship, when there's a big demand for your product and the order book for new ships is small, the prices can go through the roof. So there's a lot of demand because of ESG reasons for these offshore wind turbines, but the order book hasn't kept up with the demand for these ships. So during the pandemic, a lot of people were ordering stuff from China. So a lot of orders for container ships, the ones that carry the boxes, were coming into Korea and China. So there's a lot of those ships getting built. And as I said before in my other video, if I take my car to a mechanic, I can put my car on the lift, or you can put your car on the lift, but can't both put it on there. So when you're building a ship in some of these shipyards, you can build a container ship or you can build a VLCC carrier. You can't build both. And there's a demand for these installation vessels for these offshore wind turbines, but the order book isn't very big. And even if you were to order some now, it would be 3 years before you get them because that's how long it takes to make a ship. Now, this company has, off the top of my head, I think they had uh, 5 installation vessels and they have 2 more on order. And why that's interesting is the people that want wind turbines installed tend to generally want bigger and bigger wind turbines because they're more efficient. So these ships that are good for installing the smaller turbines are kind of being phased out because they're not good anymore. You can use them for maintenance, but they're not usable for installing the much larger wind turbine vessels. So you need larger ships to install the wind turbine vessels. So Eneti has 2 ships on order, one that's getting delivered in 2024, one that's delivered in 2025, and they'll be able to service these contracts for the larger ships. And for one of the ships that isn't even in the water yet, they've already got it booked for 9 months in 2024. And so, that's going to be a steady source of income and revenue. And as I said, there's not enough ships being built to service this market. So these guys or Cattler or people that have the bigger ships could have a big advantage. So I did say they have 4 ships and they're buying 2, sorry, 5 ships and they're buying 2, but that's not exactly accurate because 2 of the ships that they have are sort of not usable anymore, and they they currently have some value in the offshore oil and gas industry, and Eneti is still using them for the smaller contracts, but they will be phased out because they know they're not usable for the bigger things. So they do have 5 now, but they're going to sell 2. And it's advantageous to sell them now when they can still get a good price from the oil and gas people than to wait. And then if that demand from the oil and gas side goes away, they might have to just scrap them. But they have, some usable ships, 2 they're going to scrap, and 2 very big ones that they're going to have for the next generation of very large wind turbines that you need these bigger ships for. And with regard to Cattler, I didn't comb through the 20F very carefully, but Eneti has 2 of these ships on order, and Cattler, Cadelar, has 4 ships on order. So they're getting 4 of these bigger ships, and they're hoping by merging, they're going to be able to form this offshore wind turbine installation vessel company that's way more profitable. You got 2 competitors before, now there's 1 less. And it's a much larger company with much larger vessels, so you should be able to compete for bigger contracts. And if the prices go parabolic and other people want to get into this business, just remember that even though Scorpio Bulkers had plenty of experience in shipping, when they tried to get into this business on their own, they had difficulty getting contracts because it's very expensive to install these things, and the contract for installing these turbines is only about 2 or 3% of the total price of the contract. So most of it is the wind turbine and laying the cable and stuff like that. This part is a very small part of the contract, so you wouldn't want to take a chance on some new entrant and have it screw up your giant deal because you're trying to save a few bucks on the part of the contract that's only 2 or 3%. So when these guys bought installation vessels, they had trouble getting contracts. So that's why they merged with this experienced provider called CJAX, and then they were able to get a lot more contracts after that. So by Eneti merging with Cattler, they should still be able to utilize the reputation of CJAX or Cattler, and they're a much bigger entity now. And because like offshore drilling, this isn't something that you'd want to entrust to a new entrant. This can be very profitable in this sort of oligopoly market, and it would be hard for new entrants to compete because even experienced ship operators like Scorpio Tankers did not have luck breaking into this market because they want to do business with an experienced company. So anyway, that's what the advantage that Eneti has. I have shares in this in my retirement account and my taxable account. I do think 1470. If it got up to there again, I might trim some. But before I trim or before I buy more, I want to look into Cattler and decide if I should hold or sell. And um, yeah, so I think long term, this has potential to be a compounder because this is an area where there isn't a lot of competition, and the barrier to entry is that they don't want to allow new people in because, like offshore drilling, this is something that's very specialized, and you want to go with an established operator. And there are other parts of this value chain where you can look at. The company that makes the offshore wind turbines, they're different people, but one is a company called Siemens in Germany, and they make a lot of these wind turbines, but they don't make a lot of money on it, so that's not a very good bet. There's a company called Tidewater, which very well-known value investor called Robert Robati had invested in. And I think he had invested at $10 during the pandemic, and it's up to like 50 now. So he's doing really well at it. But they don't just do these wind turbine installation vessels. They do a lot of offshore service stuff. So, that might be one that you can look at. There's two companies, I forget the name, that install the cables that go from these wind turbines back to the shore. So, these wind turbines generate power, and then you need these giant ships that lay these cables and transfer the power to the shore. I forget the name, but there's actually uh, about four companies, but they're owned by two different entities. So you might see four names, but there's actually only two entities. One is a French company, and the other one I believe is Italian. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but it wasn't of that great interest to me because besides laying the cable from these offshore wind vessels to get the power to land, they also do a lot of other things with cables, like laying fiber optic cable all types of other things that do with lading cable, some of it by ship and some of it by land. So it's not exactly a pure play way to get exposure to this industry, but this is a way to get exposure to this industry. And I'll check out Cattler as well and decide what to do with this. But as I said, the family is very opportunistic, and if they were buying at 10, 1289 is okay. But if you saw it dip back under 10, I would definitely start buying again. And when it got to 8, I had bought a lot more, and was very happy with it. From 8 to 12 in a few months, that's a great deal. So this isn't a recommendation to buy or sell. This is just me going through my process, and to have a contemporaneous record of it, and then I don't decide to hold on for the wrong reasons and get exposure to the thesis drift. But do your own work. This isn't a recommendation to buy or sell. This is for entertainment and education only. You should definitely do your own research on anything you buy, and don't buy something because I bought it. There's very well-known successful investors with great track records like Seth Klarman or Warren Buffett. And if you were to copy somebody, you're way better off copying them than you are copying me. So this is just me walking through my process and keeping myself honest. So I am holding this for now. I don't know if I'll hold it forever. I will look at it, the new company Cattler, and decide where I want to go from there. But because I have some shares in my retirement account and some shares in my taxable account, that may affect what I decide to do with it. So I'm up like 30 something percent in my retirement account in a few months, and I may sell that and deploy it to something else. But the stuff in my taxable account, I might decide to hold for at least a year so that I get the lower taxable treatment. But that's not a concern if you invested in your Roth and whatever. And as I said with Scorpio Tankers and I used to own a company called Atlas Corp. These are very volatile assets, and you should definitely learn about shipping before you ever buy any shipping stock. So, as I said, this when it IPO'd was 1100, and now it's 12. So, and it got down as low as like $6 or $7. So if you think about that, you could have lost 99% of your money on this, but at the same time, if you had bought a few months ago or a year ago, you would have doubled your money, like from 6 to 12 if you had bought a year ago. So it's a very volatile industry, and it's not for everyone. Charlie Munger said that if you can't handle a 70%, 50% drawdown in the stock, you shouldn't be investing in stocks. But if you think about this, if you can't handle an 80 or 90% drawdown in the stock, maybe shipping isn't for you either. So anyway, just my thoughts. I'll do a few more videos as I get ideas. And I tend to reject a lot more ideas than I invest in. So I think the next one I'll do is a company called Olin. And I just looked at it very quickly and discarded it and moved on. And then we'll go through that process. But good luck, everyone, and hope you make a lot of money. If you have any questions about this stock, let me know. If you have a different opinion on it, leave a comment. I'd love to hear it. And if there's anything else in this industry you're looking at, let me know, and maybe we can discuss it. All right. Have a great day. Keep investing.